And now we're going to move on to Dr. Katherine High, who is at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia and has been involved in gene therapy for more than 25 years, amazingly enough. Her initial expertise has been in hemophilia, and she is one of the world-renowned experts in gene therapy. Thank you, Kathy.
Okay, well, thank you, Jean, and I'm very happy to be here today. And in this tag team approach, I thought I would, whoops, those are not my slides. Is there a, okay, great. Actually, is the forward the left or the right?
Forward right here.
Okay, good. Okay. So I am the director of the Center for Cellular and Molecular Therapeutics, which has acted as the sponsor for the RPE65 trial to date. And of course, the sponsor is responsible for a number of functions, but perhaps one of the most challenging in gene therapy over the last decade has been procuring funding to move trials ahead. And I would say that a conservative estimate of the work that's gone on in this RPE65 trial to date is that it's cost about $15 million. So I think many people here in the audience are aware of the fact that gene therapy really started, clinical gene therapy, in 1990. But in the late 1990s and early 2000s, there was a series of high-profile adverse events in gene therapy, and that had many ramifications for trying to move ahead. There was a general sense of people outside the field that gene therapy was not well understood enough to be developed as a therapeutic and was not ready for prime time. That led to a decline in the numbers of gene therapy trials, in the number of subjects who were willing and brave enough to participate in trials, and a marked decline in interest from large pharmaceutical companies and other investors. And even, I think there was a concern at the FDA Office of Cell and Gene Therapy, at least on the part of those of us who are interested in moving gene therapy forward, that the best regulators might be afraid to stay in the field of gene therapy. And the issue, I think, for what we were doing is that the general strategy for developing products, starting with proof of concept studies that can be funded by the National Institutes of Health or by disease foundations, and it would normally move forward into small biotech or pharmaceutical companies for the initial studies, and then if they were successful, moving on for the large phase 3 trials, which can be quite expensive. And the problem was that as confidence in gene therapy evaporated, these small companies also evaporated, and then there was nobody to really move the work forward through the phase 1 studies. And so into this breach stepped a few academic medical centers who remained interested in putting assets into gene therapy, the academic societies like the American Society of Gene Therapy, and the NIH, which tried to pick up some of the slack that was left by the general exodus from the field. So the solution that we came to at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia was that in order to continue to do work in gene therapy, we set up a center that allowed us to address many of the needs for phase 1-2 studies in our own hospital. So we were able to set up vector manufacturing facilities for clinical grade material and to put into place at the hospital individuals with expertise in the complicated regulatory pathways in gene therapy. And so when we put all those things into place, I promised the hospital that I wouldn't use everything to work on hemophilia. They said to please work on some other genetic diseases that affected the pediatric population. So as Jean told you, one of the first things I did was walk over and ask her if she would be interested in trying to move her very exciting work, proof of concept studies in the dog model, into clinical investigation. And she's told you that that worked out well. I'll just say that our clinical vector manufacturing facility is directed by Dr. Fraser Wright, and that we have been able to attract support for that not only from the hospital but also from the National Institutes of Health. that the hospital allowed us to recruit and retain a regulatory affairs staff with a lot of experience in clinical gene therapy, and that's been very important for the work that we've done. And that, as Jean mentioned, we've been able to bring together through the center a number of individuals who have now been working together in the field of gene therapy for a prolonged period of time. The center actually started in 2004, but a number of the individuals that we recruited to work at the center had been working with us earlier in hemophilia in various other entities. So not only do we have a lot of experience combined, but we actually have a lot of experience working together, and I think that's been helpful for some of the issues that Jean has talked about. We're now in a different time, and after many years of really having to find the funding little by little, we are in a time where we're seeing both venture capital and the public markets move back into gene therapy. This is a quote from a recently published article in Forbes magazine explaining that over the last year and a half, there has been at least $618 million raised for companies that are interested in developing gene therapy products. So I think this is a very exciting time that we're facing over the next couple of years. This lists some of the companies that have raised money either from the public markets or from venture capital, and the hope and expectation is that with this new influx of funding that we will be able to move some of these studies forward and at long last see the promise of the Human Genome Project, which hoped to be able to address genetic diseases through gene therapy, realized in the form of products to be made available for genetic diseases that right now have no treatment. So I'll just end by saying a word or two about the regulatory process in gene therapy. And this is a slide that I cadged from Malcolm Brenner, who runs the Gene Therapy Center at Texas Children's Hospital and Baylor, and suggests that, which we all know, that the regulatory process in gene therapy is extremely complicated and involves regulation by a number of different entities at both the federal and the local level. In keeping with the theme that Jean mentioned, I'll just say a couple of other issues that are relevant to the regulatory process in gene therapy. I think all of us would like to reach the day when the FDA and the European Medicines Agency had a harmonized approach to the analysis of gene therapy trials. And I think that that will be something that will ease the development of gene therapy products. That unfortunately for this biologic, a gene therapy vector, which is arguably the most complicated product yet developed because it consists of both DNA and typically a highly ordered set of proteins that comprise the vector delivery article itself, the process really is the product, and that makes it difficult to do the kinds of platform studies that might go across many different sponsors. So in our case, really the process is the product. And finally, just that for us, I think as for others interested in therapeutics for rare disease populations, it's been important to establish orphan product designation because this, I think, contains a lot of facets to the orphan product designation that will make it more reasonable for us to move forward to the goal of a licensed product. Okay, thank you very much.